Just dust that relic. Alien Emperor ordered the human janitor, but his touch caused it to awaken. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. In the gleaming halls of the Imperial Galactic Museum aboard the colossal flagship of the Zentari Empire, a lone human janitor worked tirelessly, invisible to the powerful beings that ruled the stars. Miles Harper never intended to be a janitor on the grandest vessel in the known universe. 6 years ago, he had been a simple maintenance technician on an Earth exploratory vessel when the Zentari fleet encountered them at the edge of the Sol system. The Zentari, with their highly advanced technology and strict hierarchical society, had quickly established dominance over Earth and integrated humans into their vast empire as a low-tier species. They deemed humans as physically weak, technologically primitive, and culturally unsophisticated, fit only for menial labor and basic service roles. For Miles, life had become a monotonous routine of cleaning floors, polishing display cases, and being completely ignored by the six-limbed, scaled Zentari officials who glided past him daily. Today was no different as he pushed his hovercart of cleaning supplies through the museum's Hall of Conquered Civilizations, a massive chamber showcasing artifacts from species the Zentari had subjugated over millennia. "Human, attend," came a commanding voice that made Miles nearly drop his electrostatic duster. He turned to find himself face-to-face with Emperor Vazix himself, surrounded by his royal entourage. The Emperor stood nearly 9 feet tall, his scales shimmering with an iridescent purple-blue that denoted his royal lineage. 4 of his 6 arms were adorned with ceremonial gauntlets, while his primary hands remained bare, displaying the delicate, clawed fingers that were the pride of Zentari physiology. "Your Imperial Majesty," Miles stammered, dropping to one knee as he had been trained. His heart hammered in his chest. The Emperor rarely visited the museum and never acknowledged service workers. "Rise," Emperor Vazix commanded, his vertical pupils narrowing as he studied Miles with detached curiosity. "You are to attend to a special task. The Imperial archaeologists have brought aboard a new acquisition from the ruins of Aldebaran IV. It requires cleaning before tonight's exhibition for the Galactic Council delegates." The Emperor gestured with a casual flick of his secondary left hand toward a large object at the far end of the hall. "Just dust that relic. Nothing more. It is extremely valuable and irreplaceable. Use only approved methods. Do you understand, human?" "Yes, Your Imperial Majesty," Miles replied, keeping his eyes downcast as protocol demanded. "Good. The Chief Curator will supervise. Do not disappoint me." With that, the Emperor and his entourage swept away, leaving Miles alone with Chief Curator Kraz, a severe-looking Zentari known throughout the ship for his disdain toward non-Zentari species. Kraz clicked his mandibles in irritation. "Follow me, human. And remember, touch only what you are instructed to touch." Miles followed the curator to a massive object covered in a protective field. When Kraz deactivated the field, Miles couldn't help but gasp. Before him stood what appeared to be an ancient sarcophagus or stasis chamber, roughly 12 feet tall, and made of a material that resembled burnished copper but seemed to pulse with a subtle inner light. Intricate engravings covered its surface, depicting star maps and humanoid figures with outstretched arms. This is believed to be a ceremonial container from the extinct Alderaan civilization, Kraz explained with obvious pride. "Our scholars have yet to decipher its purpose, but its artistic value alone makes it priceless. You will remove the dust accumulated during transport, nothing more." The curator handed Miles a special electrostatic brush. "This has been calibrated to clean delicate artifacts without causing damage. Begin with the lower section and work up. I will return in 1 hour to check your progress." After Kraz left, Miles approached the relic cautiously. Despite his lowly status, he had always been fascinated by the artifacts in the museum and often spent his breaks reading about the various civilizations the Zentari had conquered. There was something about this particular relic that seemed familiar, though he couldn't place why. He began dusting carefully, starting at the base as instructed. The material felt warm beneath the brush, almost like it was alive. As he worked his way up the intricate surface, Miles noticed that some of the engravings resembled ancient human script, though more complex and flowing. That was odd. The Alderaans had supposedly gone extinct thousands of years before humans had achieved space travel. After about 40 minutes of careful cleaning, Miles reached a section that appeared to be a control panel of sorts. There was a circular depression in the center, about the size of a human palm, surrounded by symbols that seemed to glow faintly as he brushed away the dust. That can't be right, he muttered to himself, leaning closer to examine the symbols. They looked remarkably similar to ancient Sanskrit, a language he recognized from the history books his grandfather, an archaeology professor, had shown him as a child. Curiosity getting the better of him, Miles placed his hand on the circular depression, hoping to feel if there were any additional engravings beneath the remaining dust. The moment his palm made contact, the entire relic hummed to life. The subtle glow intensified, and the symbols began to shine with a brilliant golden light. Miles tried to pull his hand away, but it felt stuck to the surface as if magnetized. Panic rising, he yanked harder, and suddenly the front panel of the relic split down the middle and began to slide open. "Oh no, no, no," Miles whispered, finally freeing his hand and backing away. "Kraz is going to kill me." From within the opening relic emerged a swirling column of golden light that coalesced into a humanoid figure before him. As the light solidified, Miles found himself staring at a woman who appeared almost human, except for her golden skin that seemed to glow from within and eyes that shone like twin stars. She was tall and regal, dressed in what looked like armor made of the same material as the relic. Her expression was one of confusion at first, then recognition as her gaze fell upon Miles. "A descendant," she said in perfect English, her voice resonating with a harmonic quality that made the air vibrate. "After all this time, we knew you would find us eventually." Miles couldn't speak. This had to be a hallucination. Maybe he'd inhaled some ancient spore from the relic. "I am Althea, guardian of the Luminari legacy," the woman continued. "And you are of Earth, are you not? How do you know about Earth?" Miles finally managed to ask. "And how are you speaking my language?" Althea smiled, a warm expression that somehow made her appear even more radiant. "I speak all languages of the descendants. As for Earth, we founded the seed colony there ourselves, long before the Great Darkness came." Before Miles could question her further, the museum's alarm system blared to life. Of course, the security sensors would have detected the relic's activation. He had minutes, perhaps seconds, before security forces arrived. "Listen, I don't know who or what you are, but you need to get back in there," Miles said urgently, pointing to the relic. "If the Zentari find you." "Zentari?" Althea's expression darkened, the golden glow of her skin intensifying. "The destroyers still exist in this age?" The doors at the far end of the hall slid open, and a squad of Zentari security officers rushed in, weapons drawn. Behind them came Kraz, his mandibles clicking furiously. "Human!" the curator shrieked. "What have you done?" Miles raised his hands, knowing punishment for this would be severe. "I just touched it. I didn't mean to." "Silence!" Commander Thrax, head of the Emperor's security detail, stepped forward. His eyes fixed on Althea with a mixture of suspicion and awe. "Identify yourself, being." Althea regarded the Zentari with cold contempt. "I know what you are, Zentari. Destroyers of worlds, collectors of relics you cannot understand." She turned to Miles. "This human has awakened me, which means he carries the genetic key. He is a descendant of the Luminari, my people." "Impossible," Kraz scoffed. "Humans are a primitive species from a backwater planet. They have no connection to the ancient races. Yet this one opened what your kind could not," Althea replied smoothly. She placed a hand on Miles's shoulder. "The Zentari have always envied what they could not possess. They destroyed my civilization rather than accept that they were not chosen." Commander Thrax raised his weapon. "You will come with us for questioning. The Emperor will want to speak with you." "I think not," Althea replied. With a gesture of her hand, a wave of golden energy rippled outward, freezing the Zentari security team in place. Only Miles remained unaffected. What did you do to them? Miles asked, astonished. A temporal stasis field. It will hold them briefly. She turned to face Miles fully. Listen carefully, descendant. Your people, humans, are not what you believe. You are the children of the Luminari, seated on Earth as a safeguard before the Zentari destroyed our homeworlds. Miles shook his head in disbelief. That's impossible. Humans evolved on Earth. We have fossil records, evolutionary history. All true, Althea nodded. We did not create humans, we became them. When we knew our civilization was doomed, the last of us traveled to your world and integrated with the early hominids. We became part of your evolutionary path, hiding our legacy in your very DNA, waiting for the day our descendants would be ready. The stasis field around the Zentari began to flicker. They didn't have much time. The relic you awakened is not merely a stasis chamber, Althea continued urgently. It is a key to the Luminari archive, a repository of all our knowledge and technology. Technology that could free your people from Zentari control. Why me? Miles asked, struggling to process everything. I'm nobody, just a janitor. Althea smiled again. There is no such thing as just a human. Each of you carries our legacy, though it lies dormant in most. In some, like you, the connection is stronger. Your touch activated the relic because you are a direct descendant of the Guardian lineage, my lineage. The stasis field collapsed, and the Zentari security forces stumbled forward. Commander Thrax recovered first, aiming his weapon at Althea. Enough of this deception, he snarled. Surrender now. Althea turned to Miles, her expression urgent. The choice is yours, descendant. Return to your life of servitude, or embrace your heritage and help free your people. Before Miles could respond, the doors to the hall burst open again, and Emperor Vasix himself strode in, flanked by his royal guard. What is the meaning of this disturbance? The Emperor demanded, his voice echoing throughout the hall. His eyes widened as they fell upon Althea. The relic has been activated? How is this possible? Kraz pointed a trembling limb at Miles. This human, your Imperial Majesty. He touched the relic despite explicit instructions. The Emperor's gaze shifted to Miles, cold and calculating. Is this true, human? Miles stood straighter, finding a courage he didn't know he possessed. Yes, your Imperial Majesty. And I've learned something interesting. It seems humans aren't as primitive as you thought. Insolence, hissed one of the royal advisors. Emperor Vasix raised a hand for silence, his attention now fully on Althea. You are Luminari. It wasn't a question. I am, Althea confirmed. And you are the descendants of those who destroyed our worlds rather than accept their own limitations. A thin smile spread across the Emperor's face. The Luminari were weak. They had power beyond measure yet refused to use it for conquest. Such waste. We chose to create rather than destroy, Althea replied. A concept your species has never understood. The Emperor circled them slowly. And now you have awakened. How fortunate for the Empire. You will share the secrets of Luminari technology with us. I will do no such thing, Althea said firmly. You misunderstand, the Emperor replied, his voice silky with menace. It was not a request. He turned to his guards. Take them both to the Imperial Science Division. The human may prove useful in understanding how he activated the relic. As the guards moved forward, Althea grabbed Miles's hand. Trust your instincts, she whispered. The connection goes both ways. Suddenly, Miles felt a surge of energy coursing through him, starting where their hands met and spreading throughout his body. His vision blurred momentarily, and when it cleared, he somehow knew exactly what to do. Without consciously deciding to, Miles raised his free hand toward the approaching guards. A wave of golden energy, similar to what Althea had produced but less controlled, erupted from his palm, sending the nearest guards flying backward. The Emperor's expression shifted from confidence to shock. Impossible. Miles was equally surprised, but had no time to process what had just happened. Althea pulled him toward the relic. We must reach the archive. It's our only chance. They ran toward the still open relic as the remaining guards regrouped. Commander Thrax fired his weapon, the energy blast narrowly missing Miles's head. "Stop them," the Emperor roared. "Do not let them escape." As they reached the relic, Althea placed her palm on another panel inside the chamber. The entire structure began to glow brightly, the light intensifying until it was almost blinding. "What's happening?" Miles shouted over the increasing hum of energy. "The relic is not just a stasis chamber," Althea explained, her voice calm despite the chaos. "It's a transportation device linked to the archive. Hold on." The light enveloped them completely as the Zentari guards closed in. Miles felt a sensation like being pulled in all directions at once, and then, nothing. When the light faded, they were no longer in the museum. Instead, they stood in a vast circular chamber with walls made of the same material as the relic, covered in glowing symbols and flowing patterns of light. "Welcome to the Luminari Archive," Althea said, watching Miles's awestruck expression with amusement. "One of many hidden throughout the galaxy, safe from Zentari detection." Miles turned in a slow circle, taking in the incredible space. I can't even find the words. This particular archive node was hidden within a pocket dimension adjacent to the space occupied by the Imperial Museum, Althea explained. "The Zentari have been displaying the key to one of our greatest repositories as a mere art piece for decades, unable to discern its true purpose." "Will they be able to follow us?" Miles asked, suddenly concerned. "Not directly," Althea assured him. "However, they will certainly begin searching for other relics with renewed purpose. We don't have much time." Miles struggled to process everything that had happened in the last hour. "You said I'm your descendant? That humans are descended from your people?" Althea nodded, guiding him toward the center of the chamber where a pedestal rose from the floor. "The full story is complex, but essentially, yes. When the Zentari began their campaign against the Luminari over 30,000 of your Earth years ago, we knew we could not win through conventional warfare. We were creators, not destroyers." She placed her hand on the pedestal, and a three-dimensional star map appeared above it, displaying countless points of light. "We decided to preserve our legacy by becoming part of younger species with potential. Earth was one of dozens of worlds where we integrated ourselves, our knowledge encoded within your DNA, dormant until the proper time." "But why?" Miles asked. "Why not just hide your technology somewhere and leave instructions?" "Because technology without wisdom leads to destruction," Althea said gravely. "We needed our descendants to evolve naturally, developing their own moral frameworks and societies. Only when they reached a certain level of development would the dormant knowledge begin to surface. And that time is now." Miles still couldn't believe any of this applied to him. "It has been accelerated by necessity," Althea acknowledged. "The Zentari finding Earth before humans had fully developed their potential was unexpected, but perhaps not entirely unfortunate. Sometimes pressure creates diamonds." She manipulated the star map, zooming in on a section of the galaxy. "The Zentari Empire has expanded significantly since my time. How many human worlds have they subjugated?" "Just Earth," Miles replied. "We hadn't established colonies yet when they found us." Althea looked relieved. "That's fortunate. It means we're dealing with a single liberation rather than multiple fronts." "Liberation?" Miles repeated. "You want to free Earth from the Zentari Empire? That's impossible. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. They have fleets of warships, planetary defense systems, all based on principles the Luminari mastered eons ago," Althea interrupted gently. "What seems like advanced technology to you is actually quite crude by our standards." She stepped away from the pedestal and approached Miles. "More importantly, you have something the Zentari never will." "What's that?" "The Luminari genetic key," she said, taking his hand and turning it palm up. A faint golden pattern became visible beneath his skin, like circuitry made of light. "This is why you could activate the relic when the Zentari could not. Our technology responds only to those carrying our genetic markers, a safeguard we implemented to prevent our creations from being used for destruction." Miles stared at his hand in disbelief. The glowing pattern faded after a few seconds, but the implications remained overwhelming. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now," Althea said, her expression becoming determined. "We awaken the archive fully and begin your accelerated training. Every human carries dormant luminary knowledge, but as a direct descendant of a guardian, you have a stronger connection than most." She guided him back to the pedestal. "Place your hand here. The archive will recognize you and begin the knowledge transfer." Miles hesitated, his hand hovering above the pedestal. "Will it hurt?" Althea smiled reassuringly. "No. Think of it as remembering something you already know, rather than learning something new." Taking a deep breath, Miles placed his palm on the pedestal. Immediately, the golden circuitry pattern reappeared beneath his skin, spreading up his arm. The star map above the pedestal transformed into a swirling vortex of symbols and images. Information flooded into Miles's mind, not as raw data, but as intuitive understanding. He suddenly comprehended the principles behind luminary technology, the history of their civilization, the reason for their diaspora across the stars. It wasn't like reading about these things, it was like remembering them. When the process completed, Miles stepped back, blinking as his mind adjusted to the vast repository of knowledge now accessible to him. "That was incredible." "It is only the beginning," Althea said. "The full awakening takes time. But we have more immediate concerns. The Zentari will be searching for us, and they'll be particularly interested in finding more humans who might share your ability to activate luminary technology." Miles's eyes widened as realization struck him. "Earth. They'll start testing humans on Earth." Althea nodded grimly. "Exactly. We need to reach your homeworld before they implement a wide-scale testing program. If they discover other awakened humans." A sudden tremor shook the archive chamber, interrupting her. Streams of energy flickered along the walls. "What's happening?" Miles asked, steadying himself against the pedestal. Althea's expression darkened. "They're attempting to breach the pocket dimension. The Emperor must have summoned their dimensional specialists." "They can do that?" "Not easily, but the Zentari are nothing if not persistent." Althea moved swiftly to another control panel. "We need to relocate. This archive node is compromised." "Relocate where?" Miles asked, following her. "Earth," Althea replied simply. "It's where we need to be anyway. There's a dormant archive node hidden beneath the surface of your planet. If we can reach it and activate it before the Zentari realize what we're doing." Another, stronger tremor rocked the chamber. Parts of the ceiling began to crack, golden energy leaking through. "They're breaking through faster than I anticipated," Althea murmured, working the controls with increased urgency. "The Emperor must have brought in their best specialists." A section of the wall suddenly distorted, the material seeming to stretch and thin as if something were pushing through from the other side. "They're creating a dimensional breach," Althea explained, her hands moving rapidly over the control panel. "Stand back." Miles retreated as Althea activated a sequence of symbols. A protective barrier of golden energy formed around them just as the wall tore open, revealing a glimpse of the museum beyond. Emperor Vazix stood at the threshold, flanked by robed Zentari with complex devices attached to their secondary limbs. "You cannot escape, Luminari," the Emperor called out. "Surrender the human and the archive, and I may show mercy." "Your definition of mercy is well known to my people," Althea replied coldly. "As is your treachery." She pressed her palm firmly against the central symbol on the panel. The entire chamber began to pulse with light, the frequency increasing rapidly. "What are you doing?" the Emperor demanded, a note of concern entering his voice for the first time. "Ensuring you don't acquire what you seek," Althea answered. She turned to Miles. "Brace yourself. Emergency translocation is unpleasant." The dimensional breach widened, and the first of the Zentari specialists stepped through, devices aimed at Althea and Miles. "Stop them," the Emperor commanded. The specialist activated his device, sending a beam of energy toward them. It struck Althea's barrier and dispersed, but the barrier visibly weakened. "Hold on," Althea told Miles, grabbing his arm. "This will feel strange." The light pulsing through the chamber reached a blinding intensity. Miles felt the same pulling sensation he'd experienced when they first fled the museum, but magnified 100-fold. His very atoms seemed to be stretching apart. The last thing he saw before the light consumed everything was Emperor Vazix's face contorted in fury and the archive chamber beginning to collapse in on itself. Then darkness and silence. Miles awakened to the feeling of damp earth beneath him and the sound of birds chirping nearby. He opened his eyes to see a canopy of trees above, sunlight filtering through the leaves. He sat up quickly, looking around for Althea. She stood a few feet away, her golden skin now dim to appear more human-like, though still with an unusual luster. She was scanning their surroundings, alert but calm. "Where are we?" Miles asked, getting to his feet and brushing dirt from his janitor's uniform. "Earth," Althea replied. "Specifically, a forest approximately 20 miles from what you call Washington, D.C. It was the closest safe landing zone to the dormant archive node." Miles looked around in amazement. After 6 years in space aboard the Centauri flagship, being back on Earth felt surreal. The smell of soil and vegetation, the sound of wind through trees, the feel of natural gravity, all of it nearly overwhelmed his senses. "Did the Centauri follow us?" he asked. "Not directly," Althea said. "But they'll know we came to Earth. They'll be coming." She looked up at the sky. "We have perhaps a day before their nearest vessels arrive in this system." Miles felt his newfound courage falter. "A day? What can we possibly do in a day that would make any difference against an empire that controls half the galaxy?" Althea turned to him, her starlight eyes intense. "We can wake up Earth." Althea set a brisk pace through the forest, moving with purpose and certainty while Miles struggled to keep up. Despite her regal bearing, she navigated the wilderness like someone who had walked these woods 1,000 times before. "How do you know where we're going?" Miles asked, ducking under a low-hanging branch. "The archive provided me with updated geographical information," she explained. "The dormant node is located beneath what your government designated as a nature preserve, likely because the residual energy signature made the area unsuitable for development without anyone understanding why." Miles processed this information along with the countless other revelations swirling in his mind. "So these archive nodes, they've been on Earth all this time? For thousands of years." "Millions," Althea corrected. "They were established long before your species evolved to its current form. The Luminari planned for many contingencies, including the possibility that their descendants might need guidance before they were fully ready." A thought occurred to Miles. Is that why humans have myths and legends about advanced beings? Gods, angels, ancient aliens. Were those all encounters with your people? Althea smiled. "Some, certainly. The Luminari who integrated with early humans occasionally emerged to provide guidance at crucial moments in your development. They would have appeared as beings of light to primitive humans." They continued in silence for a while, Miles digesting this information while becoming increasingly aware of a strange sensation guiding him forward. It was as if he could feel a pull from somewhere ahead, like a distant beacon calling to him. "I can sense it," he said suddenly. "The archive node. It's like it's calling to me." Althea nodded approvingly. "Your connection is strengthening." "Good. We'll need that. But what exactly is the plan?" Miles pressed. "You said we need to wake up Earth, but what does that mean?" "We can't exactly rally an army against the Centauri in less than a day." "Not a conventional army." "No," Althea agreed. "But we don't need one. What we need is to activate the dormant genetic potential in a critical mass of humans." She paused at the edge of a clearing, pointing to a small, unassuming hill covered in ferns and wildflowers. "There. The entrance is beneath that rise." As they approached the hill, Miles could feel the pulling sensation intensify. Small golden sparks began to manifest around his hands, responding to his proximity to the archive node. "How do we get in?" he asked, seeing no obvious entrance. In response, Althea took his hand and placed it against the side of the hill. "The same way you opened the relic. Command it to reveal itself." Feeling slightly foolish but trusting the strange new instincts developing within him, Miles pressed his palm firmly against the earth and concentrated. Almost immediately, the ground beneath his hand began to shift. Soil and vegetation parted, revealing a sloping passage downward, lined with the same copper-gold material as the relic and the archive chamber they'd left behind. "Impressive," Althea remarked. "You're adapting to your abilities faster than I expected." They descended into the passage, which illuminated itself with soft golden light as they progressed. After about 50 meters, they emerged into a vast underground chamber that dwarfed the archive node they'd escaped from. This space was filled with rows of crystalline structures that resembled trees, each pulsing with internal light. At the center stood a massive central column that reached from floor to ceiling, covered in the now familiar Luminari script. "What is all this?" Miles asked in awe. "This is one of the primary Earth nodes," Althea explained, approaching the central column. "Not just an information repository, but a transmission hub. From here, we can broadcast an activation signal to every human carrying the Luminari genetic markers." Miles stared at the crystal structures. "And that will what? Give them powers like the ones I'm developing?" "To varying degrees, yes," Althea confirmed. "Not all humans carry the same concentration of Luminari genetics. Some will merely experience heightened intuition or creativity. Others, like you, will develop more substantial abilities: energy manipulation, accelerated healing, enhanced cognition." "Will it hurt them?" Miles asked, concerned. Althea's expression softened. "You care for the well-being of others, even in this crisis. That compassion is a Luminari trait the Centauri could never understand." She shook her head. "No, it won't hurt them. It will feel like a moment of clarity, a sudden understanding of something they've always known but couldn't quite grasp." She placed her hand on the central column, and the entire chamber resonated in response. "We have little time. The activation process requires precision. I'll need your assistance." Miles joined her at the column, where a familiar circular depression awaited his touch. As he placed his palm against it, information flooded his consciousness once again, but this time he was better prepared. He could discern patterns and procedures, understanding the complex network that connected this node to others around the planet. "There are dozens of these nodes," he realized aloud, "all linked together in a planetary grid." "Correct," Althea confirmed, her hands dancing over symbols that appeared in the air around the column. The Luminari built redundancy into all their systems. This particular node was designated as a primary activation point, should the need arise. As they worked, Miles became aware of another presence in his mind, not invasive, but supportive. It was Althea, her consciousness connecting with his through the archive system. "Focus on the activation sequence," her voice echoed in his thoughts. "I'll guide you." Together, they navigated the complex Luminari systems, bringing dormant technologies online one by one. Miles could see through the archive sensors that similar activations were occurring at nodes across the planet, each one lighting up like a star in his mind's eye. "The Centauri will detect this activity," he realized. "Won't that just make us a bigger target?" "They already know we're here," Althea reminded him. "But yes, this will accelerate their timetable. That's why we must complete the activation before their fleet arrives." As the activation progressed, Miles became aware of something else. Countless pinpoints of light appearing across the mental map of Earth, each representing a human whose dormant Luminari genetics were beginning to awaken. "It's working," he breathed. "I can feel them." "So can I," Althea confirmed, her expression one of hope and determination. Millions of connections forming. The network is restabilizing after millennia of dormancy. Suddenly, an alarm chimed from one of the crystal structures. A holographic display materialized, showing Earth's orbital space. Several bright points appeared at the edge of the solar system. "Centauri vessels," Althea confirmed grimly. "They've arrived sooner than expected. The Emperor must have had a fleet near your system already." Miles studied the display with growing alarm. "That's not just a scouting party. That's an invasion fleet." The Emperor is taking no chances, Althea agreed. He wants the archive technology, and he'll subjugate your entire planet more completely to get it. Miles thought of his family, his parents in Colorado, his sister in Australia. Would they be experiencing the awakening too? Would they understand what was happening? We need to warn people, he said urgently. The average person has no idea what's coming. The awakening will provide some intuitive understanding, Althea assured him. But you're right, they need guidance. She manipulated the controls, bringing up a communications interface. This node can access your global information networks. We can broadcast a message. Will people believe it? Miles wondered. A warning about an alien invasion from a mysterious source. They might not need to, Althea said, pointing to the orbital display. The Zentari vessels were now visible from Earth, their massive forms entering the atmosphere at strategic points around the globe. They're not even trying to be subtle, Miles realized. This is a full-scale invasion. The Emperor is afraid, Althea explained. He fears what will happen if the Luminari legacy fully reawakens on Earth. He's trying to suppress it before it can manifest completely. Miles felt a wave of determination replace his fear. Then we need to complete the activation before they can stop us. They redoubled their efforts, working in perfect synchronization as the archive systems responded to their combined intent. The crystal structures around them pulsed more intensely, and Miles could feel the activation waves spreading across the planet, reaching more humans with every second. On the holographic display, they could see the Zentari ships deploying smaller craft toward major population centers. In some locations, strange energy fields appeared over cities, suppression technology designed to dampen the awakening signal. They're blocking the transmission in some areas, Miles observed with growing concern. Expected, but insufficient, Althea replied confidently. The signal doesn't need to reach everyone simultaneously. Once a critical mass of humans has awakened, they will naturally extend the network through proximity. The ground above them shuddered as something massive passed overhead. Dust filtered down from the ceiling of the chamber. They found us, Althea said, increasing the speed of her work. We need to complete the primary activation before they can breach this facility. Miles concentrated harder, channeling energy into the central column as Althea had shown him. The golden circuitry beneath his skin now extended across his entire body, visible even through his clothing. He felt connected to something vast and ancient, a legacy that had been waiting patiently for this moment. The chamber shook more violently as the sounds of energy weapons discharging echoed from above. They're breaking through, Miles warned. Almost there, Althea replied, her focus unwavering. 87% activation. On the holographic display, Miles could see something unexpected happening. In cities around the world, golden energy fields were manifesting, countering the Zentari suppression technology. Humans whose genetic potential had awakened were instinctively defending their communities. Look, he exclaimed. People are fighting back. Althea spared a glance at the display and smiled. The Zentari always underestimated human adaptability. It's why the Luminari chose your ancestors as carriers of our legacy. A massive explosion rocked the chamber, and part of the ceiling collapsed, revealing the sky above. A Zentari assault craft hovered there, its weapons trained on the opening. Armored Zentari soldiers began descending on cables, their weapons ready. 93%, Althea announced, her hands never stopping their intricate dance across the controls. We just need a few more minutes. We don't have minutes, Miles replied, watching the first Zentari soldiers touch down at the edge of the chamber. Making a split-second decision, Miles pulled his hand away from the central column. Keep going, he told Althea. I'll hold them off. Before she could protest, Miles turned to face the intruders. Drawing on his newly awakened abilities and the knowledge flowing through the archive, he extended his hands toward the advancing soldiers. Golden energy coalesced around his palms, then shot forward in a controlled burst that sent the first wave of Zentari flying backward. Impossible, one of the officers shouted. The human has activated Luminari combat protocols. Target the female, another commanded. She's controlling him. I'm doing this all on my own, Miles muttered, generating another energy wave that collapsed part of the chamber entrance, temporarily blocking more soldiers from entering. The Zentari already inside switched tactics, spreading out to flank him. One fired a suppression device that launched a small projectile toward Miles. Acting on instinct, he created a shield of golden energy that the projectile bounced harmlessly off of. 96%, Althea called from behind him. Keep them occupied for just a little longer. Miles didn't respond, focused entirely on maintaining the defensive position. He could feel his newfound abilities straining with the effort, his limited training making it difficult to maintain both offense and defense simultaneously. A Zentari soldier managed to circle around and fired at Althea. Miles reacted instantly, redirecting his shield to protect her, but leaving himself exposed. A blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing to the ground. Miles, Althea cried out in alarm. I'm okay, he grunted, pushing himself back up despite the searing pain. Finish it. The wound should have been debilitating, but Miles could feel it already healing, golden energy knitting the damaged tissue together. Another benefit of his awakened genetics, apparently. More Zentari forces poured through the breach in the ceiling. They were running out of time. 98%, Althea announced. Almost there. Miles gathered his strength for one final effort. Drawing on the deepest reserves of his awakening abilities, he created a massive wave of energy that swept across the entire chamber, pushing back the Zentari forces and buying a few precious seconds. The effort left him gasping, his vision blurring at the edges. He stumbled back toward Althea, determined to protect her until the activation completed. Done, she exclaimed triumphantly. 100% activation achieved. The central column erupted with brilliant golden light that shot upward through the breach in the ceiling, splitting into countless beams that spread in all directions. The remaining crystal structures pulsed in perfect harmony, amplifying the signal. Miles could feel it happening. The final wave of activation spreading across the planet, reaching every human with Luminari genetics, awakening them to their true potential. In his mind, he could see the connections forming, billions of points of light joining into a vast, beautiful network. But the Zentari were still coming. The momentary reprieve from Miles's energy wave had ended, and the soldiers were regrouping for another assault. What now? Miles asked, positioning himself protectively beside Althea. The activation is complete, but we're still outnumbered. Now, Althea said with a serene smile, we see what your people are truly capable of. The holographic display shifted to show scenes from around the world. In New York, a group of ordinary citizens stood before a Zentari assault craft, their hands raised, golden energy coalescing to form a barrier that the craft's weapons couldn't penetrate. In Tokyo, a young woman in a business suit manipulated Luminari energy to disable Zentari technology. In Rio de Janeiro, a child spontaneously healed those injured in the initial attack. It's happening everywhere, Miles realized in awe. The Zentari never understood what made the Luminari so powerful, Althea explained. It wasn't our technology or our abilities, it was our connection to each other. A network of minds and hearts working in harmony. On the display, more scenes appeared. Humans around the world instinctively accessing Luminari knowledge, countering Zentari tactics with strategies perfected eons ago. Some manipulated energy directly, while others interfaced with technology in ways that should have been impossible. All of them connected, sharing information and strength across the Awaken network. The Zentari soldiers in the chamber hesitated, receiving reports of the global resistance through their communication systems. Their confusion was evident even behind their armored faceplates. A new alert sounded from the archive system. The orbital display shifted to show the Zentari flagship entering Earth's atmosphere, an enormous vessel that dwarfed the others. Emperor Vasix had arrived personally to oversee the situation. The Emperor is here, Althea observed. He must be truly desperate. Is that good or bad for us? Miles asked, eyeing the regrouping soldiers warily. It means we have an opportunity to end this quickly, Althea replied. The Emperor would never risk himself unless he believed the situation critical. She manipulated the archive controls once more, and a new interface appeared, a direct communication channel to the Zentari flagship. What are you doing? Miles asked. Diplomacy, Althea answered simply. Something the Luminari always tried before resorting to conflict. The communication channel activated, and Emperor Vazix's face appeared on the holographic display. His expression was a mixture of fury and disbelief. Luminari, he hissed. You have committed an act of war against the Zentari Empire by interfering with our subject world. This world was never yours to claim, Vazix, Althea replied calmly. And we both know the true act of war was committed 30,000 years ago when your ancestors attacked the Luminari homeworlds rather than accept that you were not chosen to wield our legacy. The Emperor's scales flushed a darker shade of purple. Ancient history. The current reality is that your pitiful awakening will not save these humans. My forces are deployed globally. This resistance is temporary at best. Is it? Althea challenged. Look at your tactical displays, Emperor. Your forces are being systematically disabled across the planet. Not destroyed, disabled. Even now, the humans show more restraint than your forces ever did. Miles could see the Emperor receiving reports from off-screen, his expression darkening further. This is your only warning, Vazix, Althea continued. Withdraw your forces from Earth and recognize it as a sovereign world, or face the consequences. The Emperor laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Consequences? From a single Luminari and a planet of barely awakened primitives? You forget, I have an armada at my command. An armada that is quickly becoming useless, Miles interjected, stepping into view. Your ship's systems are being compromised as we speak. The Luminari built back doors into the foundational technologies that your empire later adapted. Technologies you never fully understood. This was a revelation to Miles as much as to the Emperor. The knowledge had simply appeared in his mind from the archive, another piece of his awakening heritage. The Emperor's confidence faltered visibly. Impossible. Our systems are secure. Are they? Althea challenged. Check your fleet status. The Emperor looked away briefly, consulting another display off-screen. When he turned back, his expression had changed from confidence to poorly concealed alarm. This is temporary, he insisted. A trick. My scientists will counter it. They won't, Althea said with certainty. Not without a level of understanding your empire has never achieved. You have always been collectors, Vazix, not creators. You display relics you cannot comprehend and subjugate peoples whose potential you cannot grasp. She leaned forward, her voice firm but not vindictive. Here is what will happen now. You will order a complete withdrawal of all Zentari forces from Earth and its solar system. You will recognize Earth as a protected world, off-limits to Zentari influence or intervention. In return, the humans will not use their newly awakened abilities to systematically disable Zentari technology throughout your empire, which they could very easily do. The threat hung in the air, made more potent by Althea's matter-of-fact delivery. It wasn't bravado, it was simply truth. The Emperor's vertical pupils narrowed to slits. And if I refuse? In response, Althea gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show Zentari ships around the world losing power, their anti-gravity systems failing, causing them to make emergency landings. None crashed catastrophically. They were being carefully guided down by the same golden energy that had been defending against them moments before. This is only a demonstration, Althea explained. The humans are showing remarkable restraint and control for those so newly awakened. They could just as easily disable life support systems or defensive capabilities. The Emperor was silent for a long moment, calculating his options. Finally, he spoke. I will withdraw my forces from this system, he conceded, each word clearly painful. But know this, Luminari, the Zentari Empire will not forget this humiliation. It is not humiliation to recognize when one has overreached, Althea replied. It is wisdom. Perhaps this will be the beginning of a new understanding between our peoples. The Emperor did not deign to respond to this suggestion. Instead, he barked orders to someone off-screen, and the communication cut off. In the chamber, the Zentari soldiers received new orders through their communication systems. With obvious reluctance, they began to withdraw, ascending back to their assault craft. Miles watched them go, hardly daring to believe it was over so quickly. Did we just win? For now, Althea cautioned. The Emperor will honor his word, not out of integrity, but because he has no choice. His military advantage has been neutralized, and he needs time to assess the situation and develop countermeasures. Will he succeed? In finding countermeasures, I mean. Althea shook her head. Not likely. The Luminari safeguards are built into the fundamental principles of the technology itself. The Zentari would need to rebuild their entire technological infrastructure from the ground up to eliminate the vulnerabilities. Miles looked at the holographic display, now showing Zentari vessels around the world beginning to ascend back into orbit. So Earth is safe? Earth is awakened, Althea corrected. Safety will depend on how your people choose to use their newly discovered heritage. She gestured to the display again, which shifted to show scenes from around the world. Humans helping each other understand their awakening abilities, assisting those confused or frightened by the sudden changes, working together to repair damage from the brief Zentari attack. Your species has been given a great gift and an equally great responsibility, Althea continued. The power to create or destroy, to heal or harm, to unite or divide. The Luminari legacy is not just about abilities or technology, it's about wisdom. And you think we're ready for that? Miles asked doubtfully, thinking of humanity's long history of conflict and division. Althea smiled. I think you've always been ready. You just didn't know it yet. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Look at yourself, Miles Harper. Days ago, you were a janitor aboard an alien vessel, believing yourself insignificant. Now you stand as one of the first fully awakened humans, having helped save your entire world. Miles looked down at his hands, the golden circuitry still visible beneath his skin, though less pronounced now that the immediate danger had passed. What happens next? Rebuilding, learning, growing, Althea replied. The archive contains millennia of Luminari knowledge, scientific, philosophical, artistic. It will take generations for humans to fully explore and understand it all. And you? Miles asked. Will you stay to help guide us? Althea's expression turned thoughtful. For a time. There are other archive nodes throughout the galaxy that need to be secured, other descendants of the Luminari who may need awakening if the Zentari turn their attention to them. But Earth will always be special, the world where the Luminari legacy was reborn. Miles looked up through the breach in the ceiling. The Zentari vessels were now distant points of light, retreating into the upper atmosphere. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the opening. You know, he said with a wry smile, when the Emperor told me to just dust that relic, I never imagined it would lead to all this. Althea laughed, a melodious sound that filled the chamber. The greatest changes often begin with the smallest actions, Miles Harper. That is another piece of Luminari wisdom your people will come to understand. As if in response to her words, the crystal structures around them pulsed with renewed energy, sending another wave of golden light spreading outward across the planet. Not an activation this time, but a celebration, a network of newly awakened minds connecting in harmony for the first time. Miles could feel it in his very being. The joy and wonder of millions of humans discovering their true potential, the fear and uncertainty being replaced by understanding and hope. It was overwhelming in its beauty. I can feel them all, he whispered in awe. That connection is the true power of the Luminari legacy, Althea said softly. Not the abilities or the technology, but the unity of purpose. The understanding that we are stronger together than apart. In the fading light of day, as the last Zentari ships disappeared from Earth's skies, Miles Harper, once just a janitor, now awakened to his true heritage, stood beside Althea in the ancient archive chamber, feeling the pulse of humanity's new beginning spreading across the world. The Emperor had ordered him to just dust a relic, never imagining that the simple touch of a human hand would awaken not just an ancient guardian, but the dormant potential of an entire world. In his arrogance, Vazix had believed humans to be insignificant, unworthy of notice except as servants. He could not have been more wrong. As night fell over the forest above, the golden light from the archive node spread outward like ripples in a pond, touching every human on the planet with the truth they had always carried within themselves. They were never meant to be servants. They were the heirs to the stars. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.